Alright everyone, so for the next part we're going to work on the actual barrel nut. This is kind of one of the tricky parts about using the Knight's armament rail, or the CAC rail as I like to call it. But what you see I have here is I've adjusted this vise block so that this section is holding both the upper receiver and the rail, because when we torque this down we're going to have to use a good amount of force, and we don't want this rail to wobble at all while we torque the barrel nut on there. So what I'm going to do is put some Loctite on this just as we start to thread it on, and we'll thread as much of it on by hand as we can. Kind of start like this so that the Loctite will get spread evenly across the threads. And the trick to doing this is to, once we start using a torque wrench, is not to torque it down all at once. We're going to go in a couple different stages. Now the torque settings for this are between, it says on the wrench here, 50 plus or minus 5. So I think I'm going to go about 40, between 40 and 45 is what I'm going to do. This is a torque wrench. Now you see on here, you just make sure you have the bottom loose here, and then you can adjust it. So you've got the 0 here. So once I align the 0 with the middle, you see we're at 30 pounds. So I'll start with that torque setting and then just gradually go up with it. But you need to make sure that you're using the right barrel wrench for this, because there is a knockoff one on the market. And I'll show the differences between those in another video. The barrel nut itself here is aluminum. So you're going to want to be careful as you go, especially once it starts to get tight, that you have the proper grip on the barrel nut itself with the Knight's Armament barrel nut wrench. That's one of the main differences between this wrench and the other wrench that I showed, is that this one is a little bit larger around and it gets a better hold against all of these teeth. Now these barrel nuts themselves are not necessarily meant to be used over and over again. I've taken this off and put it on. This will be the third time, so you just have to take your time and be careful with it so that you don't damage the threads. Like I said, they're very soft, and definitely do not try and do this without the proper wrench, and don't try to do it without having the rail secured like I have here. If you don't have this rail secured, it'll be very difficult, if not impossible, to get this nut installed to the right torque settings. So just don't take shortcuts. I mean, the general consensus with the Knight's stuff is that it's so expensive. If you can afford the rail and some of the other Knight's stuff, you can afford the wrench to do it too. So just don't try and cut corners. Now it's going to start getting tight here, and you'll see the torque wrench start to do its real job. It's just important that you have the Knight's wrench in the correct position so that the wrench is measuring the torque resistance correctly. You don't want it at an angle, you want it pretty much straight on like I've got it. Okay, so we're getting a positive resistance here. I'm going to try and get up a little bit higher if I can. Okay. So again, you just want to make sure that you have proper force here so that the teeth are locking on correctly. Now, as I go down, okay, you hear that click. So that was the 30 pounds. Okay. All right, here we go again. Okay, that was 40. Okay, I'm going to go up to 48. I think that'll do it for what I need here. It's not going to move much. Just make sure we have this aligned properly. Make sure we get a good there we go. All right, there we go. So that's pretty much it for the barrel nut. Again, just make sure you put some Loctite on it. As tight as we torqued it down, I don't anticipate it being able to move anyways, but you know, just like you saw, just take your time with it, make sure you have the right tools, and it's pretty easy. So now we'll move on to the gas block.